This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all of the wonderful news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We are back here on a Wednesday. We were not in the studio yesterday, so that does mean we have 2 days to fill you in on. And Monday, we had a fantastic day in the world of college football. A lot of the traditional New Year's Day bowl games pushed back one day because the NFL did dominate on New Year's Day. So we have the Rose Bowl game, which, I mean, quite honestly, was probably the best Rose Bowl game ever. We had the highest scoring Rose Bowl game ever between USC and Penn State. So we'll talk about that, the Sugar Bowl, and the other bowl games on Monday in the first segment. Second segment, we'll talk a little bit about the NFL, in particular, a few players who, one, getting a new start, a fresh opportunity in the playoffs, and one who kind of is just going downward yet again, another downward spiral for a certain Pacman player. And then we'll talk about the Hall of Fame finalists. We're down to 15, a few first names on there, who we think should get in, who we think will get in. And then we'll end the show talking about a certain basketball player who was a little upset with something the home fans were doing last night to the opposing team. And just our thoughts on home fans cheering for opposing teams in general. But anyways, Anthony, we got to start in college football. On Monday, I mentioned we had the highest scoring Rose Bowl game ever. USC kicks a field goal to win the game as time expires, 52-49 over Penn State. I picked USC personally on Monday. I thought they would win big.
Right.
That did not happen, only 3 points. But USC does get the job done. A huge performance by USC quarterback Sam Darnold, 33 of 53, 453 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception.
Yeah, no, he was it was insane how good he was throughout the whole game. I mean, obviously 453 yards, 5 touchdowns, but he, looked like somebody who, okay, cool, USC has their guy. I mean, he's a freshman. He's somebody who, you didn't think was going to be this because he wasn't the quarterback to start the year, and then all of a sudden he comes in and USC, kind of getting off to a not so great start. You're wondering if USC's ever going to get back to what they were, and then basically ever since that Utah game, they've, Arizona State, Colorado, Cal, Oregon, beat Washington. Like, they beat all these teams, and now going into the next year, USC looks like depending on how Washington can stay intact, like Browning's going to be back, but, depending on how they can be, they look like a team that's absolutely going to compete with Washington in the Pac-12 championship next year.
Sam Darnold, this kid is absolutely special.
Yeah.
You mentioned just a freshman, although redshirt, so he could come out after his season next year if he were wanting to. We know about the NFL and their problem with developing pro quarterbacks from USC. I guess you can say Carson Palmer's the best one. He's been decent. Others, Matt Leinart was a bust.
Sanchez.
Mark Sanchez a bust. Matt Barkley a bust. So we have had some issues with the USC quarterbacks going into the pros. But this kid, Sam Darnold, looks like the real deal to me, and he absolutely lit it up in the fourth quarter, really turned that game around because this game really back and forth. USC was up by 14 at one point, then Penn State turns it around and is up by 14 in the fourth quarter, then Darnold leads the team down to tie it, and then Trace McSorley, the quarterback for Penn State, throws one of his 3 interceptions within the final minute. USC returns it down to field goal range, kicks the game-winning field goal. So kind of a back-and-forth game, obviously. If you're a fan of the high-scoring games, the offenses, I mean, you were in for a treat. McSorley throws for 254 yards and 4 touchdowns. They have Saquon Barkley run for almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their top receiver is Chris Godwin. He had 2 touchdowns and 187 yards. Look on the USC side, Deontay Burnett has 3 touchdowns and 164 yards receiving on 13 catches. So, I mean, it was really just a game of Madden back and forth. And a great game as a neutral fan point. This is probably the best college football game, the bowl game we've seen all year. So now you have the questions of, okay, Penn State pushed USC, who came in really, really hot on a 9-game winning streak all the way to the end. You have Ohio State, who got shut out in the national semifinal against Clemson. Should Penn State have been in there over Ohio State? For me, I really don't think so. I would have just loved an 8-team playoff because these two teams, in my eyes, would have been in and should have been in. And it would have just added so much more to the college football playoff dimension. We're still at 4, and I think we'll stay that way for a while, but I would have loved 8. These two teams proved it. They played like playoff teams. The only problem was USC were 1-3 at one point. They didn't have Sam Darnold start their first 3 games of the year. He goes in there. They're 10-3. He wins 9 in a row. He only loses 1 game, the first game, his first start to Utah. Then you have Penn State, who got absolutely blown out by Michigan, who is a good team. You know, Michigan's a good team, a senior-led team. Penn State's full of kids. I mean, all these kids from Penn State are coming back next year. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with next year in the Big Ten. But I would have loved to see these two teams in a playoff.
Yeah, no, it would have been fun to see them in the playoffs. And as far as should they have been the team that replaced, say, like Ohio State, I mean, the teams did score 52 and 49 points. So it's not like defense was exactly something that they were good at. They were just obviously, reading off the stats, really good at offense. And, for Ohio State, they were, one of those teams the whole year, minus 1 game against Penn State where they lost by 3 off of, I think it was a blocked field goal.
Yeah, blocked field goal, blocked punt.
Yeah, like
kind of a fluky game there.
Yeah, so like out of that, like Ohio State was always that team that was in the conversation, and like I understand why they made it. Even though you want to talk about winning your conference or winning your conference and stuff like that. I mean, I would have loved to see like an 8-team playoff. I think that would have been a lot of fun. I don't even know if USC would have made it at that point because you look at the teams that are still there: Ohio State, Washington, Penn State, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. Like maybe you kick out Wisconsin, but I don't know what teams you really kick out of that group. But yeah, like you said, it probably won't go to the 8-team or even the 6-team playoff for another, call it 5 years, something like that. They're still going to have what they have because it took them forever just to get to this actual playoff itself. So actually expanding it a little bit more will come with a lot of resistance because they're already kind of talking about that as far as things like, the bowl games and how they don't matter as much anymore because outside of, this game, the Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, stuff like that still quote unquote matter. But there's only outside of those, 2 semifinals and national championship game, there's 5 that we care about. And that's basically it.
Yeah, unless you're a fan of a certain college.
Sure.
There's 40 bowl games. There's 80 teams in them. That's absolutely way too many.
Yeah.
We care about mainly the final 7, 8.
Yeah.
Maybe you can stretch it to 10 almost.
Basically from not Christmas, but probably December 29th, 30th and on. Anything around New Year's. And then whatever games on Monday for the national championship. Those are the games that we basically care about. Everything else, like you said, unless you went to West Virginia or, something like that. You care about those games, but everything else is just kind of filler on a random Wednesday or Friday that's oh, okay, cool, this is on.
Exactly. So, but one of the other bowl games we do care about is the All-State Sugar Bowl. That was as well as the Rose Bowl on Monday night. Oklahoma tops number 14 Auburn 35-19. Couple of touchdowns and 296 yards passing for Baker Mayfield. A big day on the ground by Joe Mixon, whether you think he should have played or not. Did have 91 yards rushing and a couple of scores. He also had 89 yards receiving. So he's going to be, in my eyes, one of the top running backs coming out of the draft this year. I think we've kind of getting a treat here with running backs coming out of college this year because we've seen the trend where spending a first-round, second-round, third-round pick sometimes on running backs coming out of college is necessarily not the best option. Running backs really over the age of 30 are on the decline. A lot of teams go to 2, sometimes 3 back sets now, and they rotate them all through the game. So the age of that lead bulldog, bull cow running back are kind of dying. But now, think about some of these players coming out of the draft. Dalvin Cook already declared. Leonard Fournette already declared. Christian McCaffrey already declared. Joe Mixon is, in my eyes, probably going to declare because he's had the off-the-field incidents with the domestic violence video.
Right.
But he's a great receiving back, a great dual threat back. 91 yards rushing, 89 yards receiving in this game. We're getting kind of treated here with all these running backs coming out from college football. It's honestly really nice to see.
Yeah, and recently there's been a running back kind of, revival, something like that, because basically before that, before the last year where we had basically Trent Richardson get taken by the Cleveland Browns third overall, and he turned out to be a giant bust. Recently, with something like Ezekiel Elliott, we've had the running backs, Melvin Gordon last year, even Todd Gurley, who had a good rookie year. It's kind of been something that more recently they've been taking running backs over the last 2 years high in the draft. And this year, we see what Ezekiel Elliott did. He has a decent chance to win MVP. I don't know if it's going to be him or Matt Ryan or Tom Brady, whoever wins that. But we've seen that running back position can actually pay off if you take the right one. And you talked about all the ones that are still in there. Christian McCaffrey, whether it's rushing or receiving. Leonard Fournette, just a tank. Good luck taking him down. Everybody else that's coming in, mixing with everything that he's got. I mean, love him or hate him, he's clearly a talented person that's going to be taken probably in the first round. And then we just deal with everything that happens after that. If you still want to yell at him or if you want to do whatever with that, it's something that, we see all these running backs, and maybe you don't have someone like an Adrian Peterson or even Ezekiel Elliott, someone who's like the lead back, but all these running backs are going to be taken in the first round or at least high in the second round and be a very valuable and contributing piece to whatever team takes them.
Honestly, I have a little bit of a doubts about Leonard Fournette. I realize the talent he has, the 3 years he put in at LSU, but for me, I have a little bit of doubts about him. It seems like he cares a little bit more about the name on the back of the jersey than the name on the front of the jersey, for one. Two, he was injured his sophomore year and this year, so he's getting injured in an 11, 12-game season as opposed to a 16-game season with an extra bye week mixed in, playing double-A schools. I'm a little skeptical about Fournette. For me, the person I love is Dalvin Cook. Never had any issues about his durability. Great rushing totals. Can block well. He's a good receiving back as well. For me, he's the guy I really like.
So with Fournette, like the injury things, I get. Also, Adrian Peterson had a bunch of injuries when he was in Oklahoma, and he's the best running back I've seen in the pros outside of maybe LaDainian Tomlinson. And the whole name on the back, name on the front thing. I mean, look, man, like everybody who's in the NFL has an ego. Everybody in the NFL loves themselves. I mean, my favorite player of all time is Randy Moss, so I'm not the one that's going to tell you about, stuff like that. And I mean, Leonard Fournette kind of fell into that category, kind of Jadeveon Clowney-esque of just like, look, man, like I should be in the NFL already. And like the only reason I'm staying is because we've got two cartels who basically want to keep us where we're at, and we don't let us go to the higher level, even though we're probably ready to do it. So, with Fournette, I mean, the injury concerns I get, that's the only reason why I actually would be skeptical. Everything else, I mean, he's super, super talented. You just look at the stuff he had this year. I mean, yeah, he's missed 6 games all total, but in the games he has played, 284, 147, 138, 101, 98. Like he's, had a couple of bad games there, but like the games he's played, he's been dominating when he's playing them. He's
a dominant player. I just question his durability a little bit. With Dalvin Cook, I don't have those issues. So, But anyways, I mean, I think they're both going to be great running backs, and we'll have to see how they get drafted next year in the draft. But so as I mentioned, Oklahoma did defeat Auburn 35-19.
Right.
They are the All-State Sugar Bowl champion. They win their last 10 games in a row. I really liked Oklahoma coming out of this game. I wasn't really surprised that they won. Some of the other games, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic is won by Wisconsin. They defeated the then undefeated Western Michigan Broncos 24-16. Kind of unfortunate that Western Michigan was not able to finish off their undefeated season. So now the only team that is technically undefeated still is Alabama, but we will find out on Monday if they can repeat as champions over Clemson, which they defeated last year. So when you look at Wisconsin, kind of just one of those typical Wisconsin games, kind of battled it out, won close, played good defense, 24-16. Big day on the ground rushing. They ran for 184 yards total and a couple of touchdowns. Western Michigan I kind of thought this was going to happen. They just are not that team that is really ready to play these big-name schools. They did defeat Oklahoma State earlier in the season, but kind of on a fluky Hail Mary play that shouldn't have even counted. So kind of just unfortunate for them. Great to see them get into a bowl game. I was happy that they weren't blown out. Actually showed like they should have belonged here, but
yeah.
I mean, talent sometimes just kind of takes over.
I'm kind of sad that Western Michigan didn't win because, like, I take Western Michigan this year as kind of the Boise State kind of team where...
And ironically, they're both the Broncos.
They're both the Broncos. It's one of those teams that, they go undefeated and they get to play in a big bowl game, right? They get to play in the Cotton Bowl, which is historically a big bowl, but they don't win, right? Like, Boise State always was just, like, right there, but they never could actually go undefeated and be the team that is in the national championship game back when it was the actual BCS. I think they had a really good chance one year, and I think like them and West Virginia, I think were like the number 1 and 2 seed, and then they ended up losing to, I think, Nevada. And like it sucks for Western Michigan because if they would have beaten a team like Wisconsin, who was one of the better teams all year, like they only had, I think, a couple of losses, and those losses were really, really close to, I think, Ohio State and Michigan. And if they would have won that game, would have given them a little bit of legitimacy because, the people who do the, matchups and everything else, like they probably didn't want to put Western Michigan in, but if they would have beaten Wisconsin, it would have been one of those things of like, well, I mean, okay. And then if they would have gone undefeated this next upcoming year, then maybe they, get a little bit more of a look as far as like being one of those top 4 teams. Like I wanted to see them kind of slowly keep creeping up, but if you lose this game, then it delegitimize, whatever, that word, you know what I'm saying? Kind of thing like that.
I mean, yeah, it's just a little unfortunate. Great season, but like I said, I think talent sometimes just overtakes. And then our last game we'll talk about briefly was the Outback Bowl on Monday. Florida absolutely destroys Iowa 30-3. I really saw this coming. Florida, an elite defense. I really think the only defense that's better than Florida's is Alabama's. Florida all year long, just that offense has been letting them down so much. Their defense can carry them, but the offense couldn't really do much.
Right.
I mean, look at this game here. Iowa quarterback C.J. Beathard is 7 of 23 for 55 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, one of which was returned for a touchdown. Like,
That's
this defense literally just shut down a senior leader. C.J. Beathard, not necessarily the greatest NFL prospect, but a senior experienced guy who's poised, knows what it takes to get in bowl games, and they just absolutely made him look like it was his first ever career start. Like, this Florida defense is so good. I was not surprised that they destroyed Iowa.
Right.
I saw this coming.
And you talk about their offense. Basically, since that Georgia game late October, only once have they scored more than 16 points. So, they've always the defense is, can be good unless you're playing like Alabama, which is Alabama. But yeah, their offense has been struggling. But in this game, you get Iowa, who's been kind of an up and down team all year, and they just dominated them. They just totally wrecked the whole game plan for Iowa. It didn't even look that good of, just one of those things of like, okay, cool, Florida's clearly better than Iowa.
Definitely. Austin Appleby, quarterback for Florida, throws for 222 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns, but as well as he had 2 interceptions. We'll take our first break at the show. After the break, we'll talk about NFL news, Hall of Fame finalists, and a couple of guys making some headlines right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So really quickly before we jump into the National Football League news, we're going to talk again about college. There is one thing Anthony did want to really talk about, and that's Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin making headlines the last couple of days. Obviously, he is going to be the new head coach at Florida Atlantic starting next year, but he is still taking over the offensive coordinator duties at Alabama for the time being. Well, not so much anymore. Anthony is calling it that Lane Kiffin has been fired, which reports are that's not the case. Lane Kiffin mutually agreed to step down as the offensive coordinator prior to Monday's national championship game.
Fired.
Where, well, we'll get into there, but so now Steve Sarkisian, who will be the offensive coordinator next year, and Nick Saban kind of brought him on as, I guess you can call it an analyst earlier in the year.
Special assistant kind of thing.
Special assistant. But for me, it was always offensive coordinator in training or offensive coordinator waiting, because it's almost a matter of time. We all knew before Lane Kiffin was going to take a different job in college football next year, whether going to Florida Atlantic is necessarily the best option in my eyes. I really don't think so. But for himself, he obviously thought it was, because it was really put clear that he wanted to just be a head coach, and he would take whatever he could. Reports are maybe Houston, but that didn't happen. Then he goes to Florida Atlantic. So now he's agreed to mutually step down because he's not going to be there next year. He tried to talk about Kirby Smart, who left for Georgia, but still was the defensive coordinator last year, and how there was a little bit of a distraction. Their defense got kind of lit up in the national title game against Deshaun Watson. So he's like, I don't want to replicate that thing, and I don't want to be basically blamed if the offense is struggling because I'm not in the right mindset. I'm thinking about Florida Atlantic. So he mutually agrees to step down, but you're saying fired.
Fired.
Like, okay.
Well, here's the thing. Like, we knew from the start, not from the start, but for the whole year that him and Nick Saban didn't get along. You'd always see Nick Saban yell at him on the sideline, and God, I love Lane Kiffin so much.
They're like the strangest, like that one couple you see on the street that just look like they don't make sense.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Like because the thing is, they're both really talented. Obviously, Nick Saban is probably the best college coach of all time, and Lane Kiffin, like, assuming you don't give him like total control of an organization, he's really good. He's super smart. You know, he was at USC. You know, offensive coordinator for USC. Went to the, you know, for whatever you want to talk about, he was a head coach of the Raiders, head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers, and head coach of USC. Like, he clearly has talent and knows what he's doing. Man just cannot leave anywhere gracefully. Like, he can't just be like, okay, cool, I'm going to be here. Then I'm going to go over to this program. Okay, good night. Like, his exits include the greatest press conference I've ever seen in my life, well, top two, with Al Davis getting on that little, like, overhead projector thing, just basically yelling at him for 30 minutes.
That tirade where he's, like, all bandaged up and looked like he fell down the stairs.
Mm-hmm. They had that. He left Tennessee, had basically mattresses and couches and everything else like burning in the streets because they were mad at him. USC, he got left at the airport or left wherever, you know, he didn't get to basically fly home with the team. And now with Alabama, you know, it's the whole thing of just like, oh, well, he wants to focus more on FAU, which I get that. Like, I get the fact that, you know, it's one of those kind of like senioritis kind of things, right? Like, you kind of like are already kind of checked out if you put 2 weeks notice at your old job. You're still working there, but you're like, like you're kind of still focusing on other stuff. Like, I get him actually not being totally focused on the game. Also, if they win, that looks bad for Lane Kiffin. But if they lose, then all of a sudden Lane Kiffin looks a little bit better. But and the funny thing is, Steve Sarkisian, the one that took over for him, he's now taken over for Lane Kiffin 3 times. Once when he was an offensive coordinator for USC back in, I think, like 06 or something like that. He became 06, Lane Kiffin left, and then in 07, Sarkisian became the offensive coordinator for the USC Trojans. And then when he left USC, Lane Kiffin did as the head coach, Sarkisian took over. And now with Alabama as the offensive coordinator, he's taken over. He always kind of follows Lane Kiffin wherever he goes. And Sarkisian's a really good coach, too. Like, it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing, but just this whole, God, Lane Kiffin. Like, and now I want him to do really well at FAU. Like, I want him to win basically 10, 11 games.
I don't see it happening. I mean, who's going to go to FAU?
Well,
if you're in Florida, you're going to Florida State. You're not going
Miami.
to
Right.
Miami. You're not going to, oh, Lane Kiffin's at Florida Atlantic. I'm a 4-star recruit. I'm gonna go there. Like,
thing is though, with Florida, like the state of Florida, they have 5 legitimately good coaches, you know, recruiters or whatever, because you got Lane, who's a good recruiter. You got Charlie Strong, I think it's Southern Florida, and then you got Miami, FSU, and Florida. Like, all of them have like legitimately good things to, like, you know, do, and Florida's one of those like 3, you know, states with California and Texas always have really good, you know, high school recruiting bases, everything else like that. But I just want him to do well, so that way he can basically take that FIU job and transfer it over to, like, I don't know, LSU or something like that, and then take that LSU job to the NFL and, you know, coach the Niners or the Browns or the Jaguars or something, or the Rams. Oh my God, please coach the Rams. Oh my God, that's going to be great. I just want this chaos. That's all I want.
We'll have to see. For me, the big problem here is if it is like what you said, that where he basically got fired, but it's not being said that he got fired.
Right.
Then how ready is Sark to be the offensive coordinator? I realize he's been there the majority of the year. He came in after the first like game or two.
Right.
So if he's sort of been in training and he's been working with Kiffin the whole time, then he probably should be ready to call the plays come Monday night.
Sure.
But you really don't know until Monday night.
No, that's the thing. No,
so the
it's a super
question
gamble.
for me is how ready is Steve Sarkisian to be the offensive coordinator for Alabama? Because you're going in to literally the most important game of the season with a guy who has not called a single play on the sidelines all year long. So for me, if Saban did decide basically, okay, Lane, we want you kind of to just take a departure now and say that you're thinking about other things, you don't want to be a distraction.
Right.
If Saban's going to go and do that, then he must believe that Steve Sarkisian is ready.
Yeah.
But if that was not the case, and Lane Kiffin really did do this, and he kind of dropped a bomb on Saban, Sarkisian, Jalen Hurts, Bo Scarborough, the rest of this Alabama offense, then how ready is Steve Sarkisian going to be come Monday night?
Yeah, I think it's like a super calculated gamble because, I mean, even with Lane Kiffin, there were not reports, but there was a story where he basically missed the team bus because he was doing a press conference too long and he was showing up late to stuff. So, like, he did have that whole thing of where it's like, maybe if the other players kind of saw it, like, oh, okay, like, what's this guy doing kind of thing like that. So I can get Nick Saban wanting to kind of not have any distraction as far as, like, you know, Lane not being fully invested because, I mean, Nick Saban at this point is just winning at national titles. That's, like, all he cares about. Like, if he loses 2 games in the season is meaningless to him. So I get him wanting to do that, but, I mean, God, like, unless you win the national championship, basically like, 35-7 or something like that, if it's a close game at the end and you win, I mean, fine, but like, it's going to be a lot of pressure on Sarkisian. He's someone who, like I said, super talented and everything else, knows what he's doing, but you can be a super talented person, but still, if you're basically like thrust into the Super Bowl, basically, and it's just like, all right, here, cool, call plays.
Yeah, and for me, Steve Sarkisian doesn't really have to do much. You have a freshman quarterback who is a dynamic runner, not necessarily the greatest passer. You have a physical offensive line like you always had, physical running back. Bo Scarborough, we saw what he did against Washington on Saturday, 168 yards and 2 scores. You have an elite defense, probably the best front seven that we've seen in college football in a really long time. All you have to really do is, okay, don't cost us the game. You know what I mean? They don't have to go out there and score 40 points. We had a shootout last year, 45-40. I really don't expect that this year.
Yeah, but
Alabama's just not the same offense. But all he has to do is go in there and not screw it up. He doesn't really have to do much.
He doesn't screw it up, that's fine, but we also just saw Clemson just beat the brakes off of Ohio State. Like, not only was it a close game at all, like, from the get, just, like, beat them down. And, Alabama's, obviously their defense is a lot better and their whole team is a lot better than Ohio State. But at the same time, I mean, you just saw them just totally destroy them. And maybe that doesn't happen with Alabama because, they've played them before and they know what to expect. But, good luck. Have fun.
It'll definitely be interesting to see, and we'll obviously talk about it on Monday, the preview, and then you and I will be back next week to recap it. But it'll be pretty interesting to find out. So we'll switch over to the NFL now. The Seattle Seahawks are making waves in wake of Tyler Lockett's injury.
Yep.
Their wide receiver, special teams guy, punt returner, kick returner. They have decided to bring in the guy with the most return touchdowns all time in the NFL, Devin Hester. So Devin Hester, formerly of Atlanta, he's spent some time with the Ravens earlier. He was a free agent. The Seahawks brought him in to basically be their return guy for the playoffs. Good move or no?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like you want to see if he has anything left. Like I remember, like earlier on when I started watching sports, like I remember the Ravens bringing in Deion Sanders, and I was like, oh, they have Deion Sanders. It's like, yeah, but that's not
really.
That's not Deion. Like that's not Atlanta Deion. That's not the Niners Deion. That's not Cowboys Deion. That's not even Washington Deion. That's just it's not prime time. So with Hester, it's just one of the things. Just like if you can have like one return, not even a touchdown, but if you can have like one return in a playoff game where he takes it to like 10-yard line or something like that, like I think that's worth it because all you're trying to do is basically have him get like a spark for like one game. That's all you really want. And I mean, I guess he's still capable to do it for like one play. You're not asking him to do it for a full season. It's just like, all right, just give us like one fantastic play.
For me, this is one of those typical low-risk, high-reward moves. You're bringing him in for the veteran minimum.
Yep.
He's not going to be a part of your team next year. He averaged 7 yards per punt return this season, which was basically middle of the league, 17th, 24.5 yards per kickoff return. He's not the same guy he was with Chicago. I don't expect him to really take it to the house, but you're bringing this guy in to simply just return punts and kickoffs. You're not bringing him in to be wide receiver or defensive back. You're just having him be on the field for a punt return or a kickoff return. You don't have to really give him any training with the playbook or anything. one of those typical low-risk, high-reward moves. Maybe he can break a few tackles, make some room through a hole, and take it all the way. I guess it's a good move. It's just simply just a really meaningless move, but it could have a big impact. I have to see what happens. They will obviously be taking on the Detroit Lions in the first round of the playoffs. Other news, Adam Pacman Jones yet again has been arrested. So he was released from jail within the past, actually I think this was this morning, no more than 24 hours after being booked on misdemeanor charges of assault, disorderly conduct, and obstructing official business, as well as reports of headbutting a police officer because he's obviously resisting arrest and everything.
Right.
I mean, how many chances is this guy going to get? Like,
to be fair, he's been really good for about like 5 or 6 years. But yeah, early on he was kind of Goodell's least favorite person in the league. But he's, obviously the situation, we don't know everything about it. There's still details coming out about it. But, depending on how severe it is and depending on what actually happens, we'll see if the Bengals actually cut him after having him for, 10, 12 years, something like that, and going through everything else, being a good player. But, if there's something that becomes a little bit more of a problem, I can see them releasing him and just kind of purging everything they have from the Bengals from Pacman Jones.
He was arrested basically at a hotel near the Bengals Stadium in downtown Cincinnati, kind of just being obstruction of justice, really. I'm sure there was probably some alcohol involved there. He spit on one of the nurses at the hospital jail. So, I mean, you wouldn't be doing all this if there wasn't something related to that. So I'm sure there's probably alcohol-related issues. This guy's been arrested I don't know how many times. He's 33 years old, so he's kind of getting up there in age for a defensive back already. We saw what happened to Darrelle Revis this year. Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is probably the end of the road for him. I just don't see any real future in Cincinnati with Adam Pacman Jones. They're already kind of in a rebuilding mode now. So, I mean, I really just see them saying, okay, this is it, man. Like, you're done for us. But have to wait and see what happens. And then other news in the NFL, we have our 2017 finalists for the Hall of Fame class. A few first-timers on there include LaDainian Tomlinson, all-time great running back with the Chargers, and then he ended his career with the Jets. Jason Taylor, all the things he did with Miami, and then Brian Dawkins, the safety, was with Philadelphia for a long time, and he kind of ended his career with a few teams. But so some of the other finalists that are on this list include Morton Anderson, good kicker, Tony Baselli, Isaac Bruce, Don Coryell, Terrell Davis, Alan Faneca, Joe Jacoby, Ty Law, John Lynch, Kevin Mawai, Terrell Owens, and Kurt Warner. So is this year that Terrell Owens finally gets in? Last year was his first time. The numbers are there. He obviously should be in there, but we know that he's not in there because of his issues with the media and his sort of off-the-field antics. Is this year that Terrell Owens finally gets in?
I hope so. Like, he's ridiculously good, ridiculously talented when he plays. And like you said, the only reason why he didn't make it into the Hall of Fame on the first year is because the media doesn't like him. Like, honestly, and I get why you don't like him. That's fine because he wasn't exactly nice to everybody. Like, I get he was kind of, one of those guys that always kind of rub people the wrong way, or he had the situation, whether it was in Philly where he was doing the sit-ups in the driveway. Like, I get he was probably not the easiest person to deal with, but you're also not really supposed to take that into account. But, I mean, I don't see how you don't bring him in this year. Like, I don't, fine, you want to, punish him, quote-unquote, baseball's done that before. Tim Raines is one that comes to mind as far as Baseball Hall of Fame. They don't want to put him in to the Hall of Fame, but I think this is the last year he's eligible to do it. But, as far as Terrell Owens goes, he's one of the top, 3, 4 wide receivers of all time, like Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, depending on how you want to classify, Tony Gonzalez. He's one of the best of all time to do it. And he's got to be in this year. Fine. You want to punish him for a year, fine. But this year, he's clearly been one of the best wide receivers of all time. You let him in, and you look at some of the other people that are on the list. Kurt Warner, who didn't get in, I think, for 3 years. I think this is his 4th year eligible to do it. And, he had the whole, the best story, which maybe you don't take that into account, with the Arizona Cardinals coming later in his career. He did the bag boy thing before he was with the Rams. Some of the people on this thing only get, 5 people, I think, make it to the Hall of Fame. I think it's 5 eligible.
I want to say 5, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, so, and Tomlinson, I'm thinking, is going to get in first ballot. Dawkins probably wait a little bit. Everyone else on that list, Terrell Davis has been there forever.
For me, Terrell Davis isn't a Hall of Famer. His numbers don't really stack up with some of the others. I think Warner's a good bet because of the story.
Right.
And also he's an undrafted free agent, so he really came from nothing. Terrell Owens, in my eyes, is got to be a lock this year, and I think because he didn't get in last year, I think he'll definitely get in this year. LT's first ballot in my eyes.
Yep.
Brian Dawkins. I think Brian Dawkins will get in, actually, when I look at some of these other names, but we'll have to wait and see. The Hall of Fame will be elected on February 4th, and then they'll, of course, be inducted August 5th in Canton, Ohio, prior to the Hall of Fame games. So we'll have to wait and see. We have just about a month now, and we'll obviously update you on who gets in, who doesn't get in, and possible snubs and stuff like that. But we'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to be talking about Celtics player Jae Crowder and just how upset he was at the home fans last night in Boston. Right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
So last night, Celtics forward Jae Crowder possibly had his best game of the season. He had 21 points. He was 5 of 6 from 3, 6 of 8 overall in Boston's 115-104 victory over the Utah Jazz. But that's not the headline there. So the Utah Jazz have a player that's scheduled to be a free agent next year named Gordon Hayward. We're all really familiar with Gordon Hayward. Not a bad player, decent guy. Obviously, where did Gordon Hayward go to college? He went to Butler. Who's the coach for the Boston Celtics? Former Butler University coach Brad Stevens. So he has some connections there with the coach already. He's going to be a free agent this year. You have to imagine you wouldn't really want to stay in Utah unless you're maybe chasing the money. They're not one of the best teams in the West. The Boston Celtics, one of the better teams in the East. So you could imagine that possibly there could be sort of a connection there going to Boston next year. Because of that, the Boston Celtics fans, when Gordon Hayward was introduced in the starting lineup, we're just a little happy, kind of encouraging him like, hey, Gordon, we would love you here. Like, we're going to give you a little round of applause and kind of give you a little warm welcome prior to your move to Boston next year. Well, Jae Crowder, not necessarily the biggest fan of that. So he said after the game, quote, I heard the cheering before the game. I didn't like that at all. I think that was a sign of disrespect to me from the fans, and that sparked a little fire in me. I just felt disrespected. He also took to social media, in all caps I might add, so usually that implies that you're yelling.
Anger.
So he goes, home team fans cheering for the opposing players now? Oh man, okay. Shaking my head, but good win, fellas. On to the next one. Jae Crowder upset that the home fans are cheering the opposing team. To me, this is just absolutely silly.
I mean, I get him being mad. Like, I get him basically like, okay, why are you cheering for the other player? Like, why, like he's not on our team. Like, why are you cheering for him? Like, I can understand you cheering LeBron James. I can understand you cheering Kobe when he played. I can understand all those things because they're the best player in the league. But literally, you just cheered Gordon Hayward because you were just basically trying to get the pretty girl to go on a date with you. Like, that's all it basically was, right? Like, she's kind of in a relationship right now, but that relationship is kind of shaky and it's not going to last. So you're just trying to be like, hi, look at me. I exist. Look at, kind of thing like that. And I get him kind of being mad at the situation. At the same time, there's the, like you said, clear connection there with Brad Stevens of, coaching at Butler and stuff like that. So there's that, kind of look of just like, well, he coached him there, he coached him here. Or now Gordon Hayward's one of the best players in the NBA. Like, he's not the best or, top 5 or anything else like that, but he's probably going to be an all-star. And
he's a very decent player. I kind of feel like he's maybe a little bit of a big fish in a small pond in Utah. Like, I think he can be a really good complementary piece to a team like Boston, possibly next year if he were to go there.
He also got him to the 5th seed. Utah right now is the 5th seed in the Western Conference, and he's, going 22-6 and basically 4. Like, he's doing all he can to basically make the team good, kind of in a Damian Lillard kind of situation, just trying to be the guy that does everything for the team because he doesn't have as much help as you'd like.
So, I mean, I get it, but here's my problem with Crowder. Okay, so let's say, for instance, someone was going back to Boston last night who spent a few years with the team, maybe 4 or 5 years, and is now on a different team, and they applaud him, is he going to have a problem with that too?
Well,
you can't expect a team to not applaud a certain play. Like you mentioned, it's okay if they go and cheer LeBron James or the Warriors. Like I've gone to a lot of Kings games.
Right.
And it's a little different because in California you have 4 teams.
Right.
But there's almost more Warrior fans or Laker fans when they were in their heyday with Kobe and Shaq that are at the game than Kings fans at the current time. So you might see more Warrior cheers than Kings cheers. But you don't see even DeMarcus Cousins, who's probably the most outspoken person in the NBA. You don't see him out there, oh man, the fans are just cheering for not everyone else except for us. Like I don't really like that. Like, you can't expect the fans to not cheer for someone they like.
Yeah, but the difference with that is you talk about the Kings. The Kings stink. Well, at least they're like the 8th seed now, so they're decent. But like for a while, they were bad. And if it was the Lakers when the Lakers were good, or the Warriors now when they're one of the best teams in the NBA, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I get you, cheering for them because it's kind of close in vicinity and it's both in California. And you talk about the Celtics, so let's say Paul Pierce, right, went back, he's on the Clippers right now. Like if the Clippers played the Celtics, they would cheer him to start the game, right? Introductions, they would cheer him, number, I don't even know what number he is right now for the Celtics. He's not 34 anymore. But yeah, they would introduce him, they'd cheer him, everything else like that. But then during the game, they would kind of cheer / boo / whatever him, not the whole same thing. With this one, it just kind of seemed like the thing, it was just like a weird, he has no ties to the Celtics whatsoever. He's got a tie to Stevens. So I get him being mad. I get Jae Crowder kind of looking sideways, wait, why are you cheering this guy? He's not even on the team. There's no guarantee he's going to go to the team. You're just hoping he goes to the team. It's one thing if he did the whole Carmelo Anthony thing back when he was with Denver. Basically, he was going to New York. You knew he was going to New York kind of thing. There's no clear-cut thing that he's going to go to Utah because don't forget that with CBA and the NBA, you get paid a lot more money to stay where you're at.
Right. If anything, I think Jae Crowder should use that as sort of positive reinforcement. We saw what happened with Kevin Durant last year. Reports are that Draymond Green, some of the other guys when they were playing them in the playoffs, even the regular season, were kind of like, hey, KD, we'll take you next year. We'll take you on board.
Right.
If anything, Crowder should have been should have walked up to Hayward and said, hey, you hear those fans cheering for you? You could be part of that next year. Why don't you jump on board? If anything, he should have done that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bash the guy, bash the fans, because the fans are the paying customer.
Right.
The fans are literally always correct. In customer service, the customer's always right. Well, in sports, the fans are the customer.
I work in a restaurant. That is not the case at all. But
it's not the case, but you have to have that mindset. I work in retail as well. But you have to have that mindset. If anything, the fans are the customer in this aspect. Mm-hmm. So if anything, you're going to bash them. To me, it's never a good idea. I'm just not a fan of it.
I get that.
I mean, for me, it's not a big deal. He said he used it as kind of a disrespect and kind of gave him a little spark. He had his best game. If any, okay, maybe you should be upset about something every game then, and you'll put up 20 points every game. You know, I mean, it's this is just really, really silly to me, and it's something that is so not serious that he's making so serious that it's just kind of silly. I just don't like it.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. He can be a little upset. Obviously, you want to be cheered, and you don't want to see the other team, the opponent, be cheered and everything. But it's not the biggest thing, Jay. Let it go. It'll be okay. You got the win last night. You played good.
Right.
And then just let it go from there. But kind of just doing a little too much, and we'll have to see what happens with the fans. And obviously, if they'll be a little upset, maybe they'll give him the negative, the boos next game. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't really see it. Sometimes in Boston, they're really quick to definitely show their support or lack thereof, kind of like Philly almost. Philly's not afraid to show what they're feeling as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Have to wait and see. But anyways, guys, that's going to conclude our episode for today. Anthony will be in here tomorrow to talk all things sports, and then I'll be back with him on Friday to sort of lead you into the weekend. Great weekend coming up with the NFL playoffs starting, so we'll talk about those on Friday. But Anthony will be here tomorrow, talk about all things sports. So for everyone here at the Podcast Network, my name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And we are signing off here. We'll see you tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and have a good day. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.